The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. This is a saying that you've probably heard before, but one that you've never really thought to break down as to why it actually happens, which is why in this video I'm going to be dissecting that statement alone and explaining how this takes place, and more importantly how anybody like you and me can apply these to our daily lives, because if you stick around you will realise that the things they are doing are actually pretty simple. Mindset. I'm talking about this point first because at the end of the day, if you have the wrong mindset, you are going to be set up for failure. So having the correct attitude towards money and wealth is the first thing that we all have to develop. Now, when it comes to rich people, what they possess is a positive long-term mindset that is focused on using money as a tool rather than a limited resource that will soon run out. An example of this in action is that if you were to give both somebody with a rich mindset and a poor mindset £100,000, the likelihood is that the poor mindset will instantly think about the things that they can spend that money on, such as a new car or some nice holidays, and when that money is gone, it's gone. Whereas the rich person will look at how they can utilize that money first so that they can continually buy those same nice things over and over again, because the original money that they had is being put to work to generate more money for them in the long run. Now, whilst this all sounds very simple and very straightforward, the next question, I guess, is how can they actually achieve this, and what is this magic thing that allows them to just grow their money on autopilot over time? And this leads me to talking about easily the most important thing that you have to understand if you want to develop a rich person's mindset, and that is the power of compounding interest. Now, in short, compounding interest is the concept of earning interest both on an initial investment and the accumulated interest over time. Don't worry, I'm going to break this down a lot further, but let's just say it's by far the most powerful wealth generation strategy that you can get, so much that Isaac Newton once called it the eighth wonder of the world. Let's use an example as to why he probably said that. So here we have Ben and Dave, who have both done the right thing and invested their money, and they are now ready to cash out at the grand age of 67. Now with Ben, he decided to take the wise move of investing early on in life at the age of 21, and every year he invested £2,400 but decided to stop contributing when he reached the age of 30. This meant that the total amount of money he put towards his investments during that time was £21,600. Now Dave started investing at age 30, which was 9 years later than Ben, and also invested that same £2,400 every year. But because Dave did start later, he thought it would be a good idea to continue adding money for a lot longer time than Ben did, and he did this until he reached the age of 67, in which they would both cash out. In this time, Dave invested a total of £88,800, which is a lot more than the initial investment of Ben. Now tell me, who do you think would have had more money at the end? Well, it was actually in fact Ben, whose investment grew to over £2.1 million, whereas Dave's made just over 1.2 million. Now, of course, these are both very nice amounts and you would never turn your nose up at either of them, but the main point here is that whilst Ben contributed less money, he had an extra 9 years to allow his money to compound, and this led a difference of almost £1 million between the two people. So when we look at why the rich get richer, whilst the amount of money you have to invest will of course make a difference to some extent, the real power here is that they leverage time to allow their money to grow. Now, one thing that I haven't spoken about yet is where they actually put all of this money to make this actually happen, and they do this by using these wonderful things we call investments. The rich, unlike some people may think, typically don't have much money just sat there in a spending or a savings account. Instead, what they do is they use their money to acquire assets, and this could include things such as buying stocks, property, gold and silver, and of course actually buying other physical businesses. Let's go ahead and bring Ben and Dave back into the room to use another example to show why investing your money is so much better than just saving it. Okay, so in this example, both Ben and Dave have both been given £10,000 each to do whatever they wanted with. Luckily, they're both pretty sensible with their money and they didn't want to blow it all on just materialistic things, but one of them still made a massive mistake. When Ben received his £10,000, he decided to just keep that money in his spending account for a year and just save it for a rainy day, earning him 0% interest during that time. Now, because of this awful thing that we all have to experience called inflation, which is currently averaging at 7.2% year over year, the purchasing power of Ben's money decreased as things become more expensive, and whilst he still had the original £10,000 in his bank, after 1 year its real value for buying things was actually in theory £9,280. However, Dave had different ideas. Now, instead of saving the money he was given in a bank account, Dave decided to invest that money in the stock market, and during that year his investments that he had grew by 10%, leaving him with a value of £11,000. Now, of course, Dave also suffered the cost of inflation on that money, which meant that after a year Dave's money in terms of purchasing power was in theory worth £10,208, but this was £1,000 more than Ben's money and £208 more than the money that he started with. So when you factor in inflation, which is something nobody can escape, Ben ended up poorer after a year and Dave ended up richer because he invested his money and those investments beat the current rate of inflation. And that example right there is pretty much exactly why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Now, a common myth that poor people seem to have is that you need to have lots of money up front to invest in anything, and once again, this is simply not true. This takes us back to another mindset issue because it really doesn't matter how much money you have, you can quite literally make every single penny work for you if you wanted to. In fact, if investing in the stock market is a route that suits you more, then using a platform like Trading 212 allows you to do just that. This is the app that I currently use to make my investments, and you can open an account with as little as £1. Even better, they are also offering a free share worth up to £100 to anybody that signs up through my link. You'll find it in the description down below. So having said that, using the knowledge that we know about making investments that beat the current rate of inflation, we can actually learn to understand another thing that will help the rich become richer, and that is understanding the difference between good and bad debt. Now, when it comes to debt, the rich will often use debt as a tool to their advantage, just like they do with money, whereas the poor will generally lack the knowledge of how to do anything like that. The rich also understand that not all debts are equal, and in some cases borrowing money can actually yield much greater returns. For example, when you buy a house, in most cases you will do this by acquiring a mortgage, and doing this will almost always result in you paying back the bank more than what you borrowed. This is obviously because of interest rates, and of course the bank has to make money as well. However, in recent times, and I'm talking the last 100 years, house prices have always gone up in value, leaving a net positive gain on the money you borrowed to buy the house with in the first place. This is a great example of good debt to have, and one that rich people often acquire. You will often see rich people with multiple houses where they are not only leveraging good debt to acquire additional properties, but also using tenants that will pay the rent for those properties, who are also essentially paying off that debt for them. Now, some examples of bad debt on the other hand would literally be any type of consumer debt. These could be things such as credit card repayments, payday loans, and especially finance deals on a car. These types of debts often end up with you having nothing to show for it after you've paid for it, or if you did have something, that thing is likely going to be worth a lot less than what you paid for it in the first place. Unfortunately now, the poor are completely riddled with these types of debts, and a lot of the time the reason why they have these in the first place is pretty much a combination of all my previous points built up. But moving on, I know I can't have your attention forever, and there are actually hundreds of reasons as to why this statement of the rich get richer and the poor get poorer actually even exists, but what I've just mentioned right there, I personally believe are the real game changers. So there we go. I hope this video gave a little bit more clarity to that statement, and if you did want to kickstart your journey to developing a rich person's mindset, then why not check out my quick introduction to investing in the stock market course, which I'm currently hosting on Skillshare, where you can get yourself a free 30-day trial by using the link below. If you made it this far, thank you so much for sticking around. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.